Hey everybody, it's Andy from BeyondGuitar and welcome to our video about triad inversions. So I have a student that's working on triads and we're trying to figure out triads and make sense of the inversions. And it's a little confusing on guitar. It's a lot easier on piano, but here we are on guitar. We're going to try to figure out our chord inversions. All right, so make sure your instrument's all tuned up and let's get started. So what we're looking at right here is chord inversions for a C chord. Hey, a C chord is the best place to start because a C chord is the easiest thing to play. All right, what is a C chord? You got C and E and G. Okay, see how those notes look like a snowman? They stack up circle, circle, circle right on top of each other. And visually you can see that the notes are all in perfect alignment. C, E, G, that's root, third, fifth. And the chord, the music notes in the chord are on the line, on the line, on the line. It's perfectly symmetrical. And that's how you can tell it's in root position. The actual definition of a root position chord is the root notes on the bottom. That's actually the definition, the root notes on the bottom. But here we are with a traditional straight ahead C triad. C, root note on the bottom. The third is above, and the fifth is above that. You can't get those notes any closer together. They're as close together as they can be. Root, third, fifth. Okay, C is the root, E is the third, and G is the fifth. All right, since the root note is at the bottom, basically that's what makes it a root position chord. Let's do the next one. This one says first inversion. What's that? Okay, what we did is we took the C that used to be at the bottom and instead we put it at the top. The C is an octave higher. So this chord is E, G, C. The third of the chord is at the bottom. The fifth of the chord is next. And the root of the chord is at the top. It's all mixed up, okay? It's all out of order. We have third, fifth, root. See how there's like a space right there? It doesn't look like our traditional snowman of line, line, line. Now we have line, line, space. We have an interval of a third for the first two notes, and then there's a bigger gap there. Now we have a gap. That's a fourth, okay? So there's more space there. That's one way that you can tell that it's an inversion. Okay, keep going. Let's do the next one. Second inversion. All right, we have a G, we have a C, and we have an E. Let's go through it. Okay, so G is at the bottom. That's the fifth of the chord. The fifth is at the bottom. Then we have the root note next, which is C. And then we have E on the top. That's the third. This chord goes fifth, root, third. As you can tell, the G is at the bottom, and that's what makes it second inversion. Okay, what are all the inversions? We have root position, first inversion, second inversion. Why is it like that? Okay, if C is on the bottom, it's a root position chord. If E is on the bottom, it's a first inversion chord. And if G is on the bottom, it's a second inversion chord. That's it. That's all you need to know about the inversions and how to figure them out. So notice that visually when you look at the notes, there's a kind of a gap right there. And when you see that gap, you can kind of tell, okay, well, we have a a note that's on the line. We have this gap, and then it's space, space. Must be an inversion. We have the note G, and then there's a space there. That's a space of a fourth. And then after that, there's a third. Okay, so most chords go third, third. But if you see a fourth in there, you can be guaranteed that there's some kind of inversion going on. Okay, let's play all of those in a row. C chord, root position. First inversion. Second inversion. And then root position, it's an octave higher than the previous root position chord. Okay, to really get this, you should say the names of the chords, or the names of the notes. So if you're staring at the tab, okay, the tab shows you what to do on the fretboard, but it doesn't explain what the chord inversions are or how to figure them out. So to really get this in depth, you have to go C, E, G, E, G, C, G, C, E, C, E, G. There are all the ways that we can mix up a C chord. All right, let's see what's next. Okay, next to that, we have this concept known as the spread triad. Okay, with the spread triad, this is where you have big spaces between the notes. Look at these spaces. Here we have a C. There's a huge space. There's a fifth. Okay, and then there's another huge space. There's a sixth. Oh man, we really put these notes far apart. We have a C. We have a G. And we have an E. Still makes a C chord. If you play any C, E, G in any order, it makes a C chord. In this case, we've really spread them apart wide. The notes are very far apart. We have a fifth, and then we have a sixth. Wow, from the lowest note all the way to the highest note, that's what we call in music a tenth. This spans further than an octave. Okay, so we've really spread the notes apart. Spread triad. Okay, why is it called root position? Because C is at the bottom. The root is in the bass. Okay, do the next one. So the next one has an E, big space, then there's a C, big space, then there's a G. We have an E in the bottom. We have a C next. That's a sixth. Then we have a G in the top. That's a fifth. Okay, big spaces between the notes. Okay, what's on the bottom? The bottom note is the third of the chord. Therefore, this is a first inversion chord. Keep going. All right, what's the next one? Now we have a G, and that's followed by an E, and that's followed by a C. Big space. That's a spread triad. When the notes aren't all next to each other and they're far apart, that's always a spread triad. There's no thirds in here. In fact, we have a sixth and a fifth. All right, let's see. A sixth and another sixth? Okay, that's really far apart. Okay, what note's on the bottom? The G. That makes this second inversion because the G is on the bottom. Okay, let's do this one at the end. Okay, here we have a G on the bottom. have an E, and then we have a C. Wow, that's really far apart. Okay, so that's a sixth and a sixth. Still considered a C chord. After all, it has the note C and the note E and the note G. Doesn't matter what order they're in. It could be C, E, G. It could be E, G, C. It could be G, E, C. It could be any order. As long as there's some kind of C in there somewhere, and some kind of E in there somewhere, and some kind of G in there somewhere, it's got to be a C chord. Again, doesn't matter what order you put them in. Although it is nice to know what's the note at the bottom, because that really affects your ear. When you hear the lowest note, so your ear can pick out the lowest note, and that's important. So the note at the bottom kind of determines everything. The note at the bottom is a G, which is the fifth of the chord. Therefore, this is a second inversion chord. Okay, I could have a C down low and an E up high and a G like in the stratosphere. Look, I'm playing a C chord. Any C, any E, any G, anywhere on the guitar will make a C chord, even if they're really far apart. The far apart chords are called the spread triad. All right, let's keep going. Let's do a couple other chords. So the next chord that we're going to play is a G chord. Here it is. Okay, for your G chord, you have a G. Then there's a B. And then there's a D. G, B, D. We're looking at a G and a B and a D. G, B, D. Look at that nice symmetrical chord. It's all stacked up, like if you were to build a snowman and put 3 giant snowballs on top of each other and stack them up. He just needs his little hat and the carrot on his nose and then some sticks for arms. It looks like he would stand up nice and tall. It's space, space, space right there on the music staff. That's how you know. You can't get those notes any closer together. They're as close as they're going to get. G, B, D. They're all touching. G, B, D, right on top of each other. That's your classic G chord. G, B, D, root, third, fifth. G is called the root. B is the third. And D is the fifth. All right, what's the next one? First inversion. It's a B, it's a D, it's another G. Okay, what's happening here? B is at the bottom. The lowest sounding note is B. Therefore, this is a first inversion chord because the third of the chord is at the bottom. Okay, we messed up our snowman. It used to be a stack of notes that was line, 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 or space, space, space. But here we are, space, space, line. And there's that gap there. We're looking at a third followed by a fourth. Okay, well, it must be some kind of chord inversion. See that space there where there's a fourth? It's got to be a chord inversion, all right? So just looking at the chord on the page, if it goes space, space, line, or line, line, space, guaranteed it's got to be an inversion. Okay, let's keep going. All right, what's the second inversion? The tab says 0, 0, 0. So, you know, it's all open strings, but open D, open G, open B. That is a chord. That is a triad. That's a G chord. D on the bottom, G in the middle, B on top. D, G, B. that's a G chord. Okay, what note's on the bottom? The fifth of the chord, the D. Okay, that makes it a second inversion chord. Keep going. Next chord. This is a G chord again, root position. It's just an octave higher than the other root position chord that we had just played. G, B, D. Notice how our snowman just lines up perfectly there visually on the sheet music, on the score, on the notation. You have line, line, line. Looks perfectly symmetrical. That is a root position chord. Okay, so let's play it. Let's play what we have in front of us here, all four of those G chords in a row. Here we go. Root position chord. First inversion. Second inversion. Root position. It helps to play him and hear him to understand the concept, okay? It helps to hear it. Root position. First inversion. Second inversion. Root position. Okay, let's check out these spread triads. Okay, this is where we put a huge distance between the notes. We're starting on a G. We're going up a fifth to D. Then we're going up a sixth to B. Big space between the notes. We have all the elements it takes to make a G chord. There's a G in there. There's a B in there. There's a D in there. Any G, B, D in any order always makes a G chord. Doesn't matter how far apart they are. It can be, you can play G here, you can play D here. You can make them extremely far apart. Doesn't matter. G, B, D always makes a G chord, even if you mix up the notes. So there's our root position spread triad. Okay, why learn that kind of stuff? Like, this seems like an esoteric music theory concept. Is it valuable? Totally, because if you listen to choir music and like, say for example, the Bach chorales and stuff, bass singers singing the root note, tenor singers singing the fifth, alto or sopranos way up, they got the third of the chord at the top. There's just something sunny about playing a chord and having the third at the top of the chord, especially if you're a singer. This is also something that Kurt Cobain used to do in Nirvana. He would play a power chord, which is root fifth, and then up high, an octave higher, he would sing the third of the chord with his voice. So two of the notes are on the guitar, and then he would find the third of the chord with his vocals without playing it on the guitar. Wow, that's not easy. Okay, but that was a style, and it sounds great to put the third at the top like that. So mixing up the order of the notes really has a lot of value. It makes your music less stagnant, you know, instead of just always playing root position chords. Keep going. Next one. First inversion, spread triad. Okay, what are we looking at? We got a B, we got a G, and we got a D. Big space between the notes, right? B to G, that's a sixth. G to D, that's a fifth. Really far apart there. I like this chord. I use it all the time. Okay, so next time you're on stage just playing a basic song and a G chord comes up, why Why not put the B at the bottom? The audience can really hear the low note. Can you hear it? When you put the third at the bottom of the chord, it really sounds different. I guess you'd call that a G/B if it was in cowboy chords. Okay, but there it is. It's our G chord, but B is at the bottom. Since B is at the bottom, the third of the chord is at the bottom. We have our first inversion. Keep going. Next one. Second inversion, spread triad, 5/4/3. Okay? What do we got? What is that? That's a D. That's a B. And that's a G. Hey, the root note's at the top. The fifth is at the bottom. We got the fifth at the bottom. We got the third in the middle. And we got the root at the top. It's a second inversion chord because the fifth is at the bottom. There we go. All right, let's do the last one on this line. It says root position spread triad, and it says 3/0/0. Okay, what are the notes? The low note is a G. The middle note is D. And the high note is B. What is that? That's root, fifth, third. Root, fifth, third. I think you might have heard that one in the famous Bach cello suite. Okay, so that one was played by Bach and other classical musicians. It's impossible on the cello to play a root position standard triad. Yeah, it can't be done on the cello. It can be done on the guitar. You can play this chord on the guitar, G, B, D. You can play it all at the same time. Can't play that on a cello. It's impossible. And so Bach is forced to put notes on other strings. He plays the G on one string, and then the D on another string, and then the B on the next string, and that's how cello players do it. All right, so that was our G chord. Let's keep going. Let's do one more. All right, let's do a D chord, final chord. All right, what are the notes in a D chord? Here's your classic D chord, straight out of the textbook. All right, what's a D chord? Well, I'll give you the first note. It's D. And then, after that, you got F sharp, and then you got A. D, F sharp, A. That's your classic D chord. That's a D triad. Notice how it symmetrically lines up, straight up and down, just like that snowman I was talking about. You got space, space, space. Looks perfectly spaced out right there, like a stack of circles. All right, that's your snowman. D, F sharp, A. D is the root note of the chord. F sharp is the third of the chord. A is the fifth of the chord. Root, third, fifth. Root position D chord. Okay, what do we got next? I see a space there. It must be an inversion. Here we go. You got F sharp. You got A. Then there's D. F sharp, A, D. Okay, what is that? Well, the third of the chord is at the bottom. Therefore, this is first inversion. F sharp A, D. Keep going. Next one says second inversion, and it says 2, 3, 2. Okay, that's your classic D cowboy chord that everybody knows. What are the notes? A, D, F sharp. All right, what's on the bottom of that chord? What is the lowest note? The answer is A, which is the fifth of the chord. If the fifth is at the bottom of the chord, then you know that it's a second inversion chord. See that space that's there? That's how you know it's an inversion. Keep going. We're on the root position D chord that's an octave higher. D, F sharp A. It looks like a snowman to me. See how the circles line up perfectly? They're on the line, on the line, on the line. You have a third and a third. That's how you make a triad. That's your classic triad, D, F sharp A. Okay, keep going. Let's do our spread triads. All right, here we have a D, followed by A, followed by F sharp. Big space between the notes. Since D is at the bottom, we know that that's a root position spread triad. Next. Now we have F sharp on the bottom, D in the middle, A on the top. Okay, the third of the chord is at the bottom, therefore this is a first inversion chord. Okay, what's next? Now we have A, F sharp, D. In this chord, A is at the bottom. The fifth of the chord is at the bottom. It must be a second inversion chord. I kind of like it when the root note is at the top. That would be a perfect way to end a song. Especially if the singer sang the root note at the top. Okay, final chord, this is it. Here we go. This is a spread triad, really low. Okay, we have F sharp way down low, followed by D, followed by A. F sharp, D, A. Okay, that's still a D chord, even though D's in the middle. Because it doesn't matter what order you put the notes in. You can have D, F sharp A, or you can have F sharp A, D, or you can have A, F sharp D. You can mix them up in whatever order you want. As long as there's a D somewhere in there, and as long as there's an F sharp in there somewhere, and as long as there's an A in there somewhere, you're going to have a D chord. The question is, what note's at the bottom? In this case, the third is at the bottom. All right, well, that must be a first inversion chord. There we go. Okay, well, I hope you thought that that was super helpful with the chord inversions, and I went ahead and made a PDF that you can download, and it's on BeyondGuitar.com, and check that out. And thanks for tuning in, and drop a like and a subscribe if you thought this video was helpful. And I'll see you next time.